In the desolate landscape of a world torn apart, survival was no longer a choice but a brutal necessity. The once vibrant cities now stood as skeletal reminders of a civilization that had crumbled under the weight of its own excesses. Maria, a 35-year-old former teacher, walked with calculated steps through the debris-strewn streets, her eyes scanning every shadow, every potential threat. It was in this moment of absolute vulnerability that she encountered Carlos, a 12-year-old boy whose eyes betrayed a wisdom far beyond his years. The world had stripped him of childhood, leaving only a raw survival instinct. Their paths crossed not by chance, but by the cruel mathematics of desperation. What drives a person to continue when everything has been lost? What invisible thread connects two strangers in a moment of absolute chaos? Maria saw in Carlos more than just another mouth to feed. She recognized a spark of resilience, a flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. The boy carried nothing but a worn backpack and a look that spoke of losses too profound for words. His parents were gone, his home reduced to ash and memory. The first hours of their unexpected alliance were a dance of survival. Silent communication, careful movements, each watching the other with a mixture of suspicion and desperate need. They shared no words initially, only the unspoken understanding that together they might survive what alone would certainly kill them. Resources were the currency of this new world. Water, food, shelter, each became a precious commodity more valuable than any monetary system that had existed before. Maria's teaching background gave her a strategic mind, while Carlos possessed an street-smart agility that complemented her careful planning. Their first night together was spent in an abandoned building, windows covered, minimal fire carefully controlled to prevent detection. The silence between them was thick with unspoken stories, with the weight of a world that had collapsed around their ears. Carlos would occasionally steal glances at Maria, searching for something, protection, perhaps, or simply a hint of humanity in a landscape that had become brutally inhuman. As dawn broke, casting long shadows through broken windows, they began to understand that their survival would depend on more than just physical resources. It would require trust, adaptability, and a connection that transcended the traditional boundaries of family or friendship. The world around them was a testament to destruction, but within this small partnership, something unexpected was taking root, a fragile hope, a nascent resilience that defied the overwhelming darkness. Would they become just another statistic in the brutal landscape of survival, or would they forge a path that challenged the very notion of human endurance? Their journey was just beginning, and the answer lay in the steps they would take together, moment by moment, in a world that had forgotten the meaning of mercy. The days that followed their initial encounter became a masterclass in survival, a brutal education that neither Maria nor Carlos had ever anticipated. Their learning curve was sharp, with mistakes potentially costing them their lives. Water became their first critical challenge. Finding clean sources in a contaminated world required skill, knowledge, and constant vigilance. Maria's background as an educator proved unexpectedly valuable. She taught Carlos not just survival techniques, but critical thinking. How to assess risks, read landscape, understand subtle environmental signals that could mean the difference between life and death. Carlos, in turn, brought an intuitive understanding of urban navigation that continually surprised her. Their foraging became a carefully choreographed dance. Carlos, smaller and more agile, could slip through tight spaces and scout ahead. Maria, with her strategic mind, would plan routes, analyze potential risks, and create backup strategies. They communicated increasingly through subtle gestures, a language born of necessity and growing trust. Food was scarce and unpredictable. They learned to identify edible plants, set basic traps, and preserve whatever resources they could find. Each successful meal felt like a victory against a world that seemed designed to break them. Their bodies grew lean, muscles hardened, senses sharpened. What truly separates survival from mere existence? Was it just about continuing to breathe, or something more profound? The psychological battle was equally challenging. Nights were filled with silent memories, unspoken traumas that lurked just beneath the surface. Carlos rarely spoke about his past, his eyes holding stories too painful to articulate. Maria recognized in him a resilience that both impressed and worried her, a child forced to grow up too quickly. Their equipment was minimal but carefully selected. A multi-tool, some basic medical supplies, a few pieces of clothing, and Carlos's most treasured possession, a small photograph that remained his only connection to a world that no longer existed. Each item was meticulously maintained, understood as potentially life-saving. Trust developed slowly, like a delicate plant pushing through concrete. They learned each other's rhythms, anticipated movements, created an unspoken language of survival. Maria became more than a protector, she was a mentor, a lifeline in a world that had abandoned most human connections. As weeks passed, they developed a routine that balanced movement with careful conservation of energy. They were nomads, but purposeful ones, always searching, always adapting. The landscape around them was both their greatest threat and their most important teacher. Would they be able to maintain this fragile balance? Could two individuals from such different backgrounds truly become a unit capable of surviving the unimaginable? Their story was just beginning, each day a testament to human adaptability, resilience, and the unexpected ways connection can emerge in the most challenging circumstances. The landscape of survival transformed into a complex ecosystem of human interactions, where every encounter could mean salvation or destruction. Maria and Carlos had learned that other survivors were neither purely good nor entirely evil, but complicated beings driven by fear, desperation, and the primal instinct to protect what little they had managed to preserve. Their first significant human interaction came unexpectedly, during a cold morning near an abandoned industrial complex. A group of 5 survivors, 2 women, 3 men, approached with weapons drawn, their eyes scanning Maria and Carlos with a mixture of suspicion and hunger. The tension was palpable, a living thing that seemed to vibrate between them like an electric current. Carlos observed silently, his body language communicating a readiness that belied his young age. Maria stood slightly in front of him, a protective stance that spoke volumes about their evolving relationship. Communication in this new world was a delicate dance of signals, unspoken agreements, and calculated risks. What defines the boundary between self-preservation and collective survival? How thin is the line between cooperation and conflict? The encounter could have turned violent in an instant. Resources were too scarce, trust too fragile. But something unexpected happened, a moment of mutual recognition, a shared understanding that survival was more complex than simple territorial aggression. They traded information, some basic supplies. A map fragment, hints about safe routes, warnings about dangerous territories. Each piece of information was currency more valuable than any previous economic system. Carlos watched, learning the subtle art of negotiation, reading the micro-expressions that could mean the difference between conflict and cooperation. Their movement became more strategic. They learned to read terrain, to understand which areas might offer temporary safety, which zones were too dangerous to traverse. Abandoned buildings, forgotten infrastructure, small pockets of potential resources became their temporary homes. Maria's teaching background transformed their survival into a continuous learning experience. Every challenge became a lesson, every obstacle an opportunity to develop new skills. Carlos absorbed these lessons with an intensity that was both impressive and heartbreaking. A child forced to become an adult in a world that no longer protected its young. The psychological warfare of survival was perhaps more challenging than physical threats. Constant vigilance, the need to remain alert, the understanding that one moment of weakness could mean death. These were the new rules of existence. Their relationship continued to evolve, a complex dynamic that defied traditional definitions of family or partnership. They were survivors first, protectors second, and something resembling a family only in the most unconventional sense. As they moved through this hostile territory, they carried with them not just physical supplies, but something more intangible, a growing sense of purpose, a resilience that went beyond mere survival. Would they continue to navigate this brutal landscape? Could their unlikely partnership survive the increasing challenges that lay ahead? The territory remained hostile, but they were becoming something more than mere survivors. They were becoming adapters, creators of their own destiny in a world that had forgotten the meaning of mercy. The moment of confrontation arrived with a brutality that shattered their carefully constructed sense of security. It was not a gradual build-up, but a sudden explosion of violence that erupted without warning, transforming their world into a landscape of immediate survival. The group of saqueadores approached like a storm, their movements calculated, their intentions clear. 12 individuals, armed with a mix of makeshift weapons and a few functioning firearms, represented a threat far beyond anything Maria and Carlos had previously encountered. Their approach was methodical, predatory, hunters who saw other survivors not as fellow humans, but as resources to be consumed. Carlos's training under Maria's guidance became their first line of defense. His ability to move silently, to read terrain, to anticipate movement, transformed from theoretical skill to critical survival mechanism. Maria's strategic thinking kicked into a heightened state of awareness, her mind calculating possibilities faster than most could breathe. What happens when human beings are reduced to their most primal instincts? How thin is the line between civilization and pure survival? The initial moments of the attack were a blur of motion and sound. Gunshots cracked through the abandoned warehouse where they had taken temporary shelter. Carlos's small frame became an advantage, allowing him to move through tight spaces, creating distractions, drawing attention away from Maria's strategic positioning. Maria's approach was not about confrontation, but survival. She understood that direct conflict meant certain death. Instead, she used the environment, creating obstacles, using sound and movement to confuse their attackers. Her teaching background translated into a remarkable ability to think several steps ahead, to create scenarios that would protect both herself and Carlos. The psychological warfare was as intense as the physical confrontation. Each movement was a calculated risk, each moment a potential death sentence. Carlos demonstrated a level of composure that would have been remarkable in an adult, let alone a 12-year-old child forced into this brutal reality. Their connection became their greatest weapon. Unspoken communication, anticipation of each other's movements, a symbiotic understanding that went beyond words. They were no longer just two individuals, but a unified system of survival. The attack lasted what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes. When silence finally descended, the warehouse stood as a testament to their resilience. Bodies of attackers lay scattered, a brutal reminder of the cost of survival. But survival was never just about physical preservation. It was about maintaining something fundamentally human in a world that had lost its humanity. Carlos looked at Maria, his eyes holding a mixture of fear, relief, and something deeper, a profound understanding that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. Would this moment define their future? Could they continue to survive in a world that seemed designed to destroy them? The silence was their answer, a promise of continued resistance, of hope in the face of absolute darkness. A transformiceo comico sudilment, quaes imperceptible no initio. O confronto com os saqueadores neo os destruiu, mas os reconstruiu de uma forma que nenhum deles poderia ter antecipado. Esperança neo era mais conceito abstrato, mas algo tangível que comunicavam a construir com as próprias mãos. O local que escolheram para estabelecer seu refúgio era uma antiga escola abandonada, ironicamente simbólico para Maria, que havia sido professora outra vida. As paredes carregavam memórias de mundo que existira antes do colapso, mapas despotados, livros empoeirados, vestigios de uma civilização que parecia agora sonho distante. Carlos demonstrava uma habilidade surpreendente para organização e reconstrução. Suas mãos jovens, antes treinadas apenas para sobrevivência, agora comunicavam a restaurar espaços, a criar sistemas de segurança, a transformar o ambiente algo mais do que simples abrigo temporário. Que tipo de comunidade nasce do caos? Como seres humanos reconstruem esperança a partir de ruínas? Outros sobreviventes começaram a aparecer, não como ameaças, mas como possíveis aliados. Uma mulher mais velha com conhecimentos de agricultura, jovem mecânico, enfermeiro com suprimentos médicos limitados, mas valiosos. Cada chegada era uma negociação delicada, teste de intenções e capacidades. Maria assumiu papel de liderança quase natural. Sua experiência como educadora se traduzia habilidades de organização e mídia que o grupo desesperadamente necessitava. Carlos era seu braço direito, não mais apenas menino, mas parceiro estratégico que lhe situacos com uma maturidade impressionante. Os primeiros jardins foram plantados nos terrenos ao redor da escola. Cada semente representava mais do que alimento, era auto de desafio contra o mundo que havia tentado destruí-los. Água foi canalizada, sistemas de purificação improvisados, energia optada através de painéis solares abandonados. A comunidade crescia não por acaso, mas por escala deliberada. Regras foram estabelecidas, não através de força, mas de consenso. Cada membro trazia habilidades únicas, cada contribuição era valorizada. O conceito de família se expandia além de lacos de sangue para algo mais profundo e significativo. Carlos observava tudo com olhos que haviam perdido a inocência, mas não a esperança. Maria via nele não apenas o menino que havia encontrado, mas futuro líder, alguém capaz de carregar as licos daqueles dias difíceis. Seria possível construir algo duradouro a partir de tal palco? Poderia uma pequena comunidade resistir contra mundo colapso? A resposta estava nos rostos daqueles que, dia após dia, escolhiam continuar. Não como vítimas, mas como construtores. Não apenas sobrevivendo, mas criando algo novo a partir das ruínas do antigo mundo. A esperança não era mais conceito abstrato. Era algo que eles estavam literalmente construindo, tijolo por tijolo, semente por semente, relicao por relicao. A construção de qualquer comunidade traz consigo tensões inevitáveis, e o grupo de Maria e Carlos não seria exceco. As fraturas internas começaram a se manifestar de formas sutis, como rachaduras invisíveis que amicavam a estrutura recém-construída de sua sociedade. Os conflitos emergiram primeiro nas pequenas coisas, disputas sobre distribuição de recursos, divergências sobre estratégias de segurança, diferenças de opinião sobre como administrar os espaços comuns. Cada decisão se tornava teste de resiliência coletiva. Cada debate exercício delicado de sobrevivência não apenas física, mas também emocional. Carlos observava com uma maturidade que desafiava sua idade. Ele compreendia que os traumas individuais de cada membro do grupo criavam camadas complexas de comportamento e reação. Alguns carregavam cicatrizes de perdas anteriores, outros lutavam contra medos profundamente enraizados. Como uma comunidade supera seus demônios internos? Onde termina o individualismo e comica a verdadeira colaboração? Maria assumiu o papel de mediadora. Suas habilidades de professora transformando-se em uma arte de resolução de conflitos. Ela entendia que cada tensão era uma oportunidade de crescimento, cada conflito uma chance de construir entendimento mais profundo. Os momentos mais difíceis vinham durante a noite. Pesadelos coletivos, memórias de perdas passadas, medos que habitavam os cantos escuros da comunidade. Algumas pessoas lutavam para dormir, outras ficavam em estado de alerta constante. Os sons mais suaves podendo desencadear ricos de pânico. Conflito mais serios eclodiu quando dos membros mais antigos questiona a liderança de Maria, sugerindo que sua abordagem era muito compassiva, potencialmente arriscada para a sobrevivência do grupo. Carlos, surpreendentemente, foi quem primeiro respondeu, demonstrando uma capacidade de argumentação que deixou todos surpresos. A verdadeira força de uma comunidade não estava na ausência de conflitos, mas na capacidade de navegá-los com respeito e compreensão mútua. Cada discussão era uma oportunidade de crescimento, cada desacordo uma chance de encontrar terreno comum. Traumas individuais começaram a ser compartilhados, não como feridas abertas, mas como histórias de resistência. Cada membro trazia sua própria narrativa de sobrevivência, cada história contribuindo para tecido social mais forte e mais complexo. Carlos e Maria continuavam sendo o núcleo desta comunidade, não por imposição, mas por respeito genuíno. Sua relação havia se transformado em algo além de partido e protegido, eram parceiros, estrategistas, quais uma extensão do outro. Seria possível manter a unidade diante de tantas diferenças? Poderia uma comunidade tão diversa e traumatizada encontrar caminho comum? Os desafios internos se revelavam tão complexos quanto os externos. Cada dia era uma negociação, cada momento uma oportunidade de escolher colaboração sobre conflito. Esperança sobre desesperança. A verdadeira batalha não estava do lado de fora dos muros, mas dentro do coração de cada sobrevivente. O renascimento não chegou como momento dramático, mas como uma série de pequenas transformações que se acumularam silenciosamente. A comunidade que Maria e Carlos haviam ajudado a construir agora representava algo muito além de mera sobrevivência. Era testemunho de resiliência humana. Os anos haviam transformado Carlos de menino assustado em jovem líder, carregando consigo a sabedoria adquirida através de experiências que nenhuma criança deveria suportar. Maria observava seu crescimento com misto de orgulho e uma tristeza profunda pelo que ele havia perdido para ganhar tal maturidade. A paisagem ao redor deles havia mudado. Onde antes existiam apenas ruínas, agora cresciam campos cultivados, sistemas de irrigação improvisados, estruturas reconstruídas com criatividade e determinação. Cada elemento era uma declaração de esperança, desafio lançado contra o mundo que havia tentado destruí-los. Que significado tem a sobrevivência quando se vai além de simplesmente continuar existindo? Os rituais de comunidade evoluíram. Noites de compartilhamento de histórias, momentos de reflexão coletiva, celebrações de pequenas vitórias. Cada novo nascimento, cada corrida bem-sucedida, cada dia sem perdas significativas era uma vitória contra o caos que os havia cercado. Maria havia se tornado mais do que uma líder, era uma guardia de memórias, uma ponte entre o mundo que existia antes e a nova realidade que estavam construindo. Seu conhecimento era transmitido não apenas através de palavras, mas de ecos, de exemplos vivos de resistência e complexo. Carlos agora liderava expedições de reconhecimento, desenvolvendo mapas de territórios próximos, estabelecendo conexões com outros grupos de sobreviventes. Sua juventude era equilibrada por uma compreensão profunda das complexidades de sobrevivência humana. A comunidade havia aprendido que força não significava ausência de vulnerabilidade, mas a capacidade de abraçar as próprias fragilidades. Cada membro trazia cicatrizes, mas essas cicatrizes não os definiam, eram simplesmente marcas de uma jornada de superação. Seria possível construir algo duradouro a partir de tal pouco? Poderia a esperança realmente triunfar sobre o desespero? Os sinais de renovação eram evidentes. Crianças nasciam, conhecendo apenas esta nova realidade. Sistemas de educação eram recriados, conhecimentos antigos preservados, novas habilidades desenvolvidas. A comunidade não apenas sobrevivia, mas começava a prosperar. Maria e Carlos olhavam para o horizonte, não mais com o medo dos primeiros dias, mas com uma esperança cautelosa. Eles haviam transformado o acaso de seu primeiro encontro em algo muito maior que si mesmos, uma comunidade, uma família escolhida. Farol de possibilidade mundo que parecia ter perdido toda esperança. O renascimento não era destino, mas processo continuo. Cada dia era uma escala, cada momento uma oportunidade de construir, de se reconectar, de encontrar significado no meio do caos. A história deles não era apenas sobre sobrevivência. Era sobre a capacidade humana de se reinventar, de encontrar luz mesmo nas mais profundas escuridões.